Alright guys, welcome back to Discovering
Take 3.
My name's Brandon.
I'm Jonathan.
I'm Artix.
And I accidentally hit the wrong button. So, take 3. Last week we recorded everything. Computer crapped out on us, couldn't save it, corrupted file, and then we just did the intro, did the bumper, and then I hit stop recording instead of switch back to the other. So, man, this is going great. This episode really wants to air. Yeah, we're going to try the prayer again, because God definitely needs to hear us a second time. Because we definitely need the prayer. But anyway, we'll get into it, and this time I won't hit the wrong button.
Lord, please. Amen. Lord, we just thank you for this time to gather together, to discuss these different topics that we love to nerd out on. And we just pray that as we engage in this discussion, that we approach it in a way that glorifies you and your name. Gosh, my other prayer was so much more intricate than this. I just pray that we actually get through it this time. And we, again, thank you for this opportunity to speak on these things. Amen. That was awkward.
Embrace the
Can
awkward.
we do take 4?
No, the bumper. This time, I didn't make the mistake. And we are back!
For now.
Fingers crossed. So this week, and this will start the weeks of where we talk about... So, the past 3 weeks, we've talked about seraphim, cherubim, and nephilim, the 3 Eames. And then these next 3 weeks, or at least approximate, the next couple of episodes, we're going to be referencing back to the Eames, but taking a look at some other creatures that are almost exemplary of some of these, of the 3 Eames.
Yeah.
That match one way or another, or I find similarities with. And so we'll start today with the counter of seraphim, which is Nagas and Gorgons.
And Nagas are from Fire Emblem.
See, and I think like Chrono Trigger.
That's fair too.
You got God of War,
Yeah.
other things like that. First place I remember, Gorgons especially, is Fire Emblem. Sacred Stones. Fire
It's a good
Sacred
one.
Stones. Love that one. But yeah, those are things. Or, you find them in anime, like in Japan, Lamias, all that. Yeah. But
One of the funny ones that I remember for a Gorgon is Castlevania Symphony of the Night, where it's just a bull that breathes stone gas. Like, same effect, totally different creature.
so what do you have to eat that day?
The Gorgonzola.
Yeah.
That checks out.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting past the point there. It's something that stood out to me, especially for Nagas, and we'll get into the Hebrew a little bit. It basically stems from the Hebrew. So for one of the occurrences, like some of the occurrences of seraphim that are in the Bible, one of the words is nahas, which is quite similar to Nagas. Like with the enunciation and everything for it. I probably butcher it, but it looks similar enough. And there's definitely this divine aspect to Nagas that also is appropriate to seraphim as well. So interesting look. So we'll look into that. But first, I wanted to kind of go into, okay, so what are Nagas? For those who don't know what Nagas are. So, good old Britannica. And I look up a bunch of different things, but I try to get at least somewhat of a reputable source. Whether Wikipedia or Britannica are, reliable. Well,
Come on, if it's on the internet, it's true. We all know this.
oh yeah, exactly. Totally. But I try to get stuff from like museums or different things like that. Just try to get it at least somewhat accurate to some degree. Obviously, some of this stuff, yes, I do pull from like Wikipedia, Britannica, but I also try to fact check it. So there's that. Because guess what? I'm not all knowing, but the internet is. Whether it'll tell you one thing or another, it knows. Just ask AI.
Yeah.
Just for AI to tell you the wrong thing. And then it's like, oh, that's not what it means. Oh, but whatever. Gotta love it. Technology.
It's a deep rabbit hole.
Yeah, we're not going to go there today. maybe later.
It's a whole other creature.
Future episode.
Series finale.
That's the truth. So, and I'm taking this straight from Britannica. So Nagas are a member of a class of mythical, semi-divine beings, half human and half snake. They are a strong, handsome species who can assume either wholly human or wholly serpentine form, and are potentially dangerous but often beneficial to humans. They are also associated with waters, so rivers, lakes, seas, and wells, and are guardians of treasure. And they're found in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Well, basically, congrats, it's in the area of India. Or thereabouts. Not just India, obviously. So, what's something that stands out to you when I read that description of Nagas?
Handsome. That made me laugh. I don't know why it made me laugh when you read it. I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
what a dapper gentleman.
That's a snake.
Yes.
It's a snake with a top hat.
No, I think the thing that like genuinely stands out is because at least in like the pop culture that I've seen where that term is thrown around is it's either kind of a mix between a human and a snake, but hearing that, oh, they can take a fully human form or a fully serpentine form, I've always kind of seen that mix where it's kind of that in between.
Yes.
So I think that's what stands out the most to me is that, oh, they can do whatever they want,
Yeah. The shape shifting between the two.
Yeah.
Or in between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the wrong end. Oh no. It's the mermaid, but this time it's the other way around. But I know I said this the last time we recorded, and obviously it's gone. But kind of that link of the fully human, fully serpentine reminds me of going all the way back to Fafnir with the dwarves, who, guess what? It's a dwarf.
It was a dragon.
Who turned into a dragon. Awesome. You can just assume the dwarves there can assume other forms. Kind of, I don't know if they viewed dwarves as divine. I don't really know, to be honest.
I don't think so. Not in Norse mythology, at least.
But the fact that, they can basically transform into whatever the heck they want.
Yeah.
Are the rules really, concrete?
It's a whole nother definition of problem.
Yeah.
I think the other part that stood out to me, and again, this more or less aligns with kind of the pop culture that I've seen, is that aspect of divinity. Again, like, I think back to, like, Fire Emblem. Every character in that game that is mentioned as Naga is some sort of goddess or divine figure
and dragons themselves are viewed as
divine,
or like Myrrh, for example, in the Sacred Stones. For example, you have that, and you have the Great Sage that helps whatever. But yeah, same kind of thing. And I don't think it's a coincidence. It's intentional, especially in those, especially for what Nagas are. They're viewed as like, well, they're not quite deities, but they're like semi-deities or demigods.
Yeah.
Where they're viewed of very highly and have that divine aspect to them. Yet they are not themselves gods. Which, if you look at that in terms of, like, say, seraphim, for example, well, they're angels. They have this divine aspect to them. They are themselves are not God. There's a higher authority above them. So, another thing that's interesting, Nagas are in the zodiac as a replacement for dragons, like in Chinese. So, for example, Cambodia and other places like that have a zodiac as well. They use different animals to replace some of the other animals that they see in their own culture.
Kind of region specific.
Yeah, so region specific. So you see elephants, you see different things like that on some of these things. Nagas replace the dragon, which the fact that they're still there, interesting. Because if everything else is an animal that very clearly is an animal that exists, you look at the Nagas, dragons, and I mean, it's still a quote-unquote dragon if you look at it. Because Nagas, sure, they have this serpentine thing, but everybody thinks, snake.
Yeah. That's the whole, like, Eastern dragon. That the Eastern dragon is very serpentine anyway.
Yeah. So it's definitely interesting, and I'll bring up the slideshow again when we get into it, and I wanted to get into a little bit of the Hebrew and stuff before I go to the slide, where you're going to see some images of Nagas. So I know I briefly mentioned this earlier, is Nagas have the potential to do great good and great bad. Like, they have this tendency of they can do really good, but they have the potential for that to go south. Like, they can be beneficial to humans, but also potentially dangerous. Kind of like the poison. What do people do with, snake venom, for example? Well, you can use it as medicines, or you can, file it as poison. Depends on how you use it. So, with great power comes great responsibility.
Nagas are Spider-Man.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Nobody mocks Smokey the Bear in the podcast.
But yeah. So Nagas are they have a powerful poison, and this is kind of similar to the seraphim, like fire in an aspect, because you have different types of fire. Fire can be used for good and for ill. When you think of holy fire, holy fire, you think of refinement, purifying, but then at the same time burns away what is bad. Which, well, it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing to one, curse to another. Depends on how you look at things. But also, like that fire, for example, what if it, turned or went south? Kind of, again, and I'll mention this later when we get to the Hebrew, but like the serpent in the garden, Satan, the devil. What happens if it turns, falls, like seraphim are, like the fall? There's that aspect within the word itself. What happens to that fire? Well, it becomes that more dangerous side. So it had the potential to be good. It just went sour. It turned the negative way. Whereas, like we see in Eastern culture, dragons are seen in more of a positive light because they have that more positive connotation.
Yeah.
But they also mention, but it can be dangerous. You know, don't go, oh, it's my pet. I'm going to stick my hand in it. He won't bite it. Trust me.
Right.
Oh, I don't have that hand anymore. Well, it must not have been needed. Talk to any crocodile out there. But yeah. Anyway, let's go into the Hebrew before we run out of time. So we're really gonna run out of time this time. So let's just go into this. And of course it was.
Take 4.
No, it's just gonna do this the long way. We love this. We love it. It loves us. It's great. So this is more of the examples and pictures of Nagas, for example. So I have Nagakanya, or I probably butchered that, but that's down below. Something interesting is you'll see a snake headdress.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting to what we will see later in Medusa. And the fact they have wings. They're produced with wings. And obviously you see the half and half bulk of the time, but also you have the, quintessential dragon that you see in the middle there.
Yep.
So, obviously we talked about the anthropomorphic, even with Fafnir a little bit too. But let's go into the Hebrew, which is Nahas, which one of the examples that this is in the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Which most people say is Satan or the devil, which I also agree. So that's Nahas, which means serpent. But it's also found in like the bronze serpent, different things like that, where this word Nahas is used. And the verb, or not noun, Nakash, which is in the same thing, means serpent or snake. And then the verb nakash, which means used divination. So it has some sort of divine aspect to it, which you think of the bronze serpent, let's lodge it. Or you look at, it's the serpent in the garden. There's some aspect of divinity there. Why? Well, it's because it is something that's sort of there, and that's why it's also classified as a seraphim. Why it's in the occurrence within the Bible. So, what is a seraphim? Well, from what we looked at, seraphims could be interpreted as a fallen angel or a flying serpent or something like that. Mm-hmm. What Nagas are, if you call them semi-divine, that's kind of angel-like, if you will, and they have wings, much the same, and are, dragon snakes. So, the fact that they're really similar, I don't think is a coincidence. And it's still within the possibility of being able to be talked back and forth between Israel and, say, India. Because India had a lot of the spices, the Silk Road, that still existed, even way back when.
Yep.
So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Obviously, people mix and intermingle and different things like that. I mean, look at Rome. If you want to talk about a big melting pot, that's Rome. And why you see a bunch of different myths and everything about a whole smattering of different things. Because they kind of took over quite a bit of land and talked to a lot of people. And bada bing, bada boom, you have a lot of different stories.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go a little bit into the serpent, Genesis 3. So I'm just gonna start going through my notes. Unfortunately, you don't get to experience what we were talking about beforehand. Yeah, it's a shame. But anyway, So from the context, the serpent is of supernatural origin, unlike any of the other animals in the story of creation. I.e., it talks. Yeah, the other animals don't do that, or at least aren't mentioned to do that.
Right.
And this is through the curse that God gives the serpent. Cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel. So, the crawl on the belly. I know we mentioned this in other episodes of what this exactly could mean for like the animal standpoint.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this could also mean, hey, this is a fallen angel. You had your wings clipped. You were once a flying snake, and now you're just a snake, a legless lizard. You got your wings clipped. You fell. You have fallen.
Yep.
Seraphim. So it's interesting in that notion as well, because we can all agree the serpent is likely a snake, or a bulk of people agree. Obviously, I tried giving different opinions as well. But if it indeed is a snake, then what a seraphim is a flying snake, or a dragon, potentially. Especially if you look at things like Nagas, for example, where you can they assume different forms.
Yeah, because I mean, my mind kind of jumps also to that description in Isaiah where they have there's more of a humanoid description of them, so it's very possible they could take on other forms.
Or even look in the book of Revelation, you have the dragon.
The dragon, yeah.
Well, what is it? Like, it has all these symbolism and everything like that as well. So it's. And then, obviously, you will crawl in the belly the rest of your life, which means it didn't used to.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, yeah, if you're up in the clouds or whatever, I'm like,
Right.
No, guess what? You're a legless lizard. You don't get legs no more. Oh no. Slither.
Yeah.
I'm a worm. WYRM. I'm a worm. Let me slither in sadness. Yeah. And then also, I mentioned this earlier. It's also interesting because just as, Satan or the devil is not fully divine, but has that aspect to it, semi, so are Nagas. Now, other places may deify them, kind of like Bhutan or other places like that, but it's a lesser deity as opposed to a greater deity. So it's a demigod, where it has this divine aspect to it, but it's not the top dog or top dragon or whatever you want to call it.
The top dragon. I like that.
So just like for Nagas, there's a higher authority. Satan has a higher authority. That is God. Or Jesus, or whatever. So here's something, I don't even know if I mentioned it before because I'm going through my notes and I completely disregarded my notes before. So here's an interesting question. And this goes to all the other fallen angels, or demons, if you will. So if Satan was a snake and had fallen, and obviously this is bringing about a very much, I guess, I don't want to say metaphorical example, because if you think of Satan as a Naga being fully human or fully serpentine, that kind of thing. So take it that way. We'll say take it that way. So if he was a snake and had fallen, as well as his followers, which Satan did have followers, could they have also taken the form of snakes or humanoids?
I was actually, before you even brought up that question, kind of my thought that was going through my head, and I wasn't entirely sure how to even phrase it, and I don't know if I still do, but you see all these different spiritual beings throughout, that are called gods or whatever in, Old Testament and stuff like that. And so kind of my mind jumps to is, what if these were, the spirits or beings that were present that people were interacting with, seeing, but they were just fallen angels. That's kind of where my mind goes.
Yeah.
And
the fact that it's like you have some of these things called Nagas. They have to have come from somewhere.
right. Yeah. When you're seeing consistencies from culture to culture, and some of that could be, as we were talking about, people sharing stories and stuff like that, but part of that could be, they're telling me the story, but I've had this experience, this spiritual experience, for lack of better words, and that seems to fit with this description.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what this is, and that's kind of where my mind goes, and I don't know if that is the best explained where.
Well, it's the whole idea that what you're talking about there too. That how many people have these experiences or these visions, like, oh, I've seen this being of light, or I've seen the snake that's talking to me, or I've seen this thing or whatever. Like, in biblical or not, like, people across all cultures have these kind of experiences, and then it's the choice of, okay, well, this thing came to me. What do I do with that?
Yeah.
Do I say, like, oh, this is, an angel that came down from God and I'm still worshiping God, or am I going to worship this thing?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting case here, because it really puts into, like, okay, so clearly people come into contact with angels and demons, whether we realize it or not, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
It even infiltrates some culture. So, like, for example, I think Nagas are just an infiltration of it in culture.
Yeah.
Because like, for example, what if that was how they look like? Who knows? I mean, obviously things over time change, and they become more deified. But what if that's exactly what they were? Which makes me think of, okay, so what did the Nephilim look like?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If that was angels and humans coming together, could they have been Nagas or Lamia or whatever you want to call it? What does that look like? Because you see that in culture. Like, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that just a different version of this? Or Nagas or Gorgons or whatever. I didn't see any connection when I looked at the site for Bible Hub between Nagas and seraphim. But then I looked at it because I saw Nahas, and I'm like, wait, that looks awfully familiar to Nagas that I see. So I took a look at it, and then that's why we have this video.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could be completely off base on this, but it's an interesting thought exercise, right? Because it forces you to consider the possibility. And
I mean, are they simply symbolic?
Well, and that's,
or
we don't
are
know,
they
right?
like actually a physical being?
And I mean, my mind kind of goes more towards, I mean, it was, again, I could be off base, but it was a spiritual being. And I think you put it, Marty, in kind of what I was trying to say, in that, is this something from God, or is this something else entirely? What are we going to do with that? And I think that's what people were doing. At least that's my perception of the situation, that people are taking an experience and kind of running with it, whatever that experience may be.
Yeah. And something that's interesting here is Nagas are often viewed as positive. So they help out a lot of things, which is interesting, or it helps humanity, as it says. Now, obviously, and there were also negative ones as well. But it's also another interesting take, because usually when we think of Satan, it's not looked at in a positive manner. But
I guess my question would be, I mean, maybe you don't know, but what was the perception of the positive aspects of them? Was it wealth and fortune, good luck, or do you just not know?
I'd have to look
Yeah.
things up a little bit more in detail, but
I'm just curious because I'm interested in.
Yeah, I mean, part of it talked about them being like guardians for
Yeah.
things.
oh
too,
yeah,
so-
like for example, you could almost say like the guardian at the end of obviously it's called a cherubim there
Mhm.
at the end of the Garden of Eden,
Mhm.
protecting with the flaming sword. That's a guardian.
Mhm.
So, like, what are seraphim? Are they fallen cherubims? Or, like, what are they? Like, they're an angel one way or another. It's just they're more fallen. But they also reflect the Father, like God, in one way or another, so they still have that aspect of good to them.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, and is every
Because-
seraphim fallen? I mean, that's the question because you have things like Isaiah too, where
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
it's a very interesting
Which-
thought exercise.
And I think the way that Nagas is termed is they have the potential to do bad,
Right.
but they themselves are not necessarily bad.
kind of giving that free will aspect.
So
in a way,
it gives that's kind of my view of what seraphim is.
Yeah.
You have those that have fallen that are the bad eggs, so to speak. And then you could have some that are not. But at the same time, you look at the Hebrew, well, seraphim, part of it is fall.
Yeah.
So, as like some of the base words, well, especially when they're used, it's used, like, for example, the serpent in the Garden of
Mhm.
Eden, which is fallen angel. Obviously, they're still angels one way or another.
Yeah.
Still that divine aspect to them. I already kind of talked about the holy fire aspect. Didn't mention a word that I had in here. The perversion or corruption of that fire.
Yeah.
As in fire, poison. Fire can be good, consuming, all-consuming, purifying, refining. And then you have more of a corrosion or
Mhm.
perversion
Yeah.
of that same fire.
almost that poison
Yeah.
element.
So it becomes a corrupting, corrosive poison for those who defy God.
Yeah.
So it could be like that bitterness aspect to it, where you have the flames, but that boils. Like there's something else underneath it
Mm-hmm.
that is pained. But obviously, fire with divinity is not uncommon. You see this in a lot of places. You see it in the Bible, countless places.
Mm-hmm.
You see the burning bush, pillar of fire, all that kind of things, or they consume the fire like offerings by fire,
Mhm.
Mount Carmel, different things like that. So you see that fire aspect, and that's a good fire. Except if you're the other followers of Baal at Mount
Yeah.
Carmel, then it's not so
That's not
good.
good for you.
Then it's not so good. Because because they boil. Because at the bottom. But anyway, that's besides the point, and we'd rather not go there at this point because we're running out of time, and I'm just gonna keep going. So yeah, let's move on to Gorgons. Oh. Okay. So
That is a beautiful picture.
that is indeed a
Very
beautiful
handsome
picture.
indeed.
Very, very handsome, which is in contrary to the handsomeness of the Nagas,
Yeah.
Gorgons are supposed to be really ugly.
Yeah.
And yes, that right there is a Gorgon. So Medusa would have looked similar to this.
Which I still gotta say, I said it last time that we tried recording this, but the fact that they have wings, like, that's so bizarre to me.
Yeah, because usually when you think of Medusa, you don't think of the wings.
Yeah.
I didn't know wings were an aspect
No, I
of
didn't.
Medusa.
Yeah. Not at all.
And obviously, in Medusa's story, Medusa was fully human, and then was cursed
Yeah.
to be a Gorgon. Which there were immortal Gorgons, and then there was Medusa, and Medusa got her head
Removed.
and used as a curse later.
Right.
I put things there you can read on the screen when you see it. This is just a classical representation that you see on pottery and different things like that. I have exactly where it is on the screen. I'm not even going to try to pronounce any of that. So it's there.
Oh gosh.
So, yeah. That's all information that I didn't really know. But, like, for example, and this goes into Britannica, I have it on here. So Homer, who wrote, like, Iliad, all that stuff.
Famous Greek poet.
Yeah. Spoke of a single Gorgon, a monster of the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
And then a later Greek poet, let's multiply that.
Nice.
So now there's 3. But it makes me think a single Gorgon. Well, that's kind of similar to Satan, in a way,
Mm-hmm.
of the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
You have all that, and there's a single one. But then you get, the later Greek poet, now there's multiple of them. Well, because, even that makes sense in some ways, because, Satan's got to have his number 1 and number 2 guys. Because he did have followers.
Right.
So there could be, more.
Those that fell with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Obviously, then they put names and stuff with them and everything. But then, Nagas are handsome.
Yeah.
Except Gorgons are only female. So,
Well, and I think it's also interesting that we talked about. I mean, Nagas have the potential for good, whereas
Gorgons are clearly bad.
evil. Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting distinction in that they are exclusively evil, at least in
And guess
that
what?
mythology.
The same headdress with all the snakes,
Mhm.
same wings as depicted with the other, and, they were half human, half snake.
Right.
So, it's a Naga, except it's not.
Right.
Which is why they're so similar and why I combined the two.
Yeah.
And another thing that's interesting is, doesn't that look like an Oni mask
Okay, yeah.
for
Definitely
Japanese?
does.
And would the Romans been connected with Japan at that time? I don't know. I have no idea. But in the Oni mask, there's a lot of demon stuff that they do in Japanese. And if that is indeed what a demon looks like, maybe it's coming from some sort of reality of, hey, maybe this is what a demon actually looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just a representation of it.
Mhm.
Or, they call it really ugly and it looks like this particular model, whatever. But I don't know. It's an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens if an angel falls? Do they become corrupt, perverted, corroded in a way? Does that make them look uglier, so to speak? I have no idea. But it's interesting you come from this point of Nagas and more of a refined look into a perversion or corruption of it
Mm-hmm.
in Gorgons. It's just interesting to me. Because, one, you could say, for example, Nagas are the good kind, at least. Those are the good seraphim, if you will. And Gorgons, they're the bad ones. The ones that have fallen, become corrupt, whatever. Perversion,
Mm-hmm.
cursed, so to speak. It's an interesting train of thought.
Yeah.
And like you said, portrayed as winged creatures. Again, no idea.
Yeah.
Gorgons had wings. Tell them that to Fire Emblem.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have wings.
I don't think they do in most stories.
No, you kind of always see them as just kind of your typical what Medusa you would kind of think of as humanoid,
Yeah.
no wings, but snakes for hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or on
So-
their head. or
And
whatever.
that's something that it remains true for
Mhm.
like a lot of representations. And guess what? You still have the snakes on the head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's really fascinating. Some of this stuff, like, and I wouldn't have known if I didn't look it up, and I wouldn't have looked it up if I didn't connect the dots, and here we are. And I'm showing it to you guys because, well, I think it's interesting and cool, and we can have a discussion about it. Yeah. Then you get to the aspect of turning to stone. Where does that come from?
Yeah.
So that's something with like Medusa's head,
Mhm.
different things like that, part of like the curse and everything. The only like turning to stone that I know of in the Bible is Lot's wife,
Yeah.
who turns into a
Salt.
pillar of salt. And I don't know of any other instance.
That's
It's interesting because it's like, where does stone come into it? Because that's not associated with Nagas except that they live underground,
Right.
protecting treasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just it's interesting. Yeah. Dang it! I wish I could remember what we were talking about.
Well, I know
earlier.
one of the things you brought up about the curse of stone is the possibility of it being like an isolationist type of thing.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah. Hold on, I'm just gonna bring this back. You can see our lovely mugs. I'm gonna
The other
hover
part
over
that's
this.
kind of the other part that's kind of interesting to me, just thinking about Nagas and Gorgons and kind of the comparison between the two of how one is perceived as more good and the other is perceived as clearly evil, is it goes back to that discussion on dragons where Western dragons are often viewed as evil
Yep.
and Eastern dragons are more
Good.
good, and it's you're seeing that here too with this
Mhm.
same creature. It's very interesting. That's kind of
But at the same time, like, now is it just a Western philosophy that it
Yeah, who
turns
knows?
and
Who knows?
perverts it bad? Because, well, where'd they get this information?
Mhm.
If they did indeed get it from India,
yeah.
well,
and I
then
mean,
India would have the Nagas approach, which is more positive.
yeah.
Mhm.
So then why would it turn the other way?
Yeah, it's a very interesting.
Unless there's
thought, but
there's a connection between that and seraphim that you see
Mhm.
in the Middle East
Yeah,
or in other cases like that. So it's interesting. Obviously, we don't know everything because, well, that time's gone,
Yeah.
coming past.
all speculation.
Yeah.
But it's definitely interesting to think about. And obviously, there is another creature that is related to seraphim a little bit, which the Bible Hub talked about a little bit more, which is the griffin, which we'll get into next week. Because
Griffin is also very interesting.
the Egyptian seraph, as it's spoken, or SRF, if for the other, I guess, enunciation, or not enunciation, outlook of, you view it, you read it, that's what it
Perception.
whatever it is, I can't think, can't speak. But yeah, that is like an Egyptian guardian griffin.
Mhm.
And I kind of alluded to it a little bit today, like the relationship between cherubim and seraphim, because something that is very heavy in cherubim, I would say, is griffin as well. More so cherubim, especially when you look in like Gates of Ishtar and all that kind of stuff as well, and what exactly they would have, depicted a cherubim to look like, say, on the temple walls or in the Ark of the Covenant. So, anyway, we'll get there, and we're going to end the video before my computer craps out on me. So,
Again.
all right. Thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you next time on Griffins.
Toodles.
See you later.
See ya. And I doubt this is going to work, so we're just going to go, I guess, and say bye.